Well, welcome everyone. We're going to get started now. I'm Kerry Lutz, and together with Bill Powers, we are Mining Stock Educators. Today, you're going to be learning more about Prospera Energy and their exciting 18-well drill program, which is almost ready to get started within a very short period of time. Personally, it's one of my largest holdings, and I've been interested in the company now for a better part of a year. With us today is CEO Samuel David and VP of Finance Chris Ludke, and these two gentlemen combined experience in the energy sector over 50 years, and Prospera really embraces the very essence of a successful turnaround story, going from just 60 barrels per day BOE now to back over around 1,000 barrels per day. It's at a major crossroads for the company, and if the results are as good as management is expecting, the company and its shareholders will profit accordingly. So Sam, Chris, I'll give it over to you, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Good morning. I'll just jump right into it. We prepared some slides to explain or to convey what Prospera development and corporate strategy is about. We have divided into 4 parts here: the total presentation, the corporate strategy, the achievement and the opportunity, and addressing any concerns through question and Q&A. Our corporate strategy, our restructuring strategy, was divided into 3 phases, 3 development phases. Phase 1 is to optimize low-hanging fruit and address all the legacy arrears and address all non-compliances and bringing infrastructure to safe operating conditions. Now, you have to remember when restructuring commenced, this company was in a terminal position, and it was heading for receivership. As Kerry referred to, we started out of the gate around 80 barrels, 80 BOEs a day. Currently, we did peak towards end of quarter 4 last year, almost 1,100 to 1,200 BOEs a day. And then we encountered harsh winter conditions, and we had to shut down one of the facilities because we were encountering around minus 50 Celsius, and the heavy oil starts freezing up and pressures pipeline could burst, so we did shut in. So that effect, that harsh winter effect, is reflected in quarter 1, and in quarter 2 we started to rebound back and resume production. Currently we're doing 800 BOEs a day, and another 300 to 500 BOEs are just behind a pipe, small maintenance work, and we can bring it on. For example, we're fixing a water pump at one of the facilities, so some of these barrels are shut in, and we'll be bringing them back on. So the base production in phase 1, we have attained around 1,200 BOEs a day. Right now we are 800, and another 300 to 500 is just behind the pipe as we are fixing and maintaining, repairing these things without a service rig. We also raised the NPV value of the company, the reserve value of the company, from 3 million or 6 million to $72 million. The current market cap is around 30 million. It did rise up to 50 to 60 million a few months ago. The LLR rating has risen about 1. We started around 4.37. Our break even is around 500 barrels a day, and our so there's free cash flow above 500 BOEs a day, contributing to our capital development and optimization. We also reduced the OPEX from about 60 barrels a day $60 a barrel to about 38. I think we're currently even closer to $33 a barrel. We also piloted 2 horizontal re-entries to assess our horizontal well transformation of these properties. There's significant remaining reserves. There's only less than 10% of the oil in place has been recovered by vertical technology, and there's a lot of undrained reserves remaining in situ. So horizontal wells can access much longer pay than 2 or 3 meters from a vertical well. And also it could eliminate a lot of vertical locations along the way, along the laterals, and reduce the environmental footprint, and also reduce fixed operating cost by reducing property taxes and eliminating all leases as well. The accounting was also the books was in a very poor condition, and it has been audited and reconciled, and now we're more current. I believe our second quarter was audited. Our second quarter financial results were delivered promptly. We also we acquired a medium light oil asset to diversify our product margin away from heavy oil dependency. All of this was completed in phase 1. Now we're positioned ourselves to commence phase 2. Phase 2 is to commence a modular transformation from vertical to horizontal wells. So we have proposed 10 horizontal wells based on the pilot wells. And the medium oil was tested, and they tested at very favorable, encouraging rates of flowing barrels of 100 barrels a day in one well, and another well at 300 barrels a day. So we have proposed 8 medium light oil directional wells to develop, appreciate that medium oil property. There's also a strategic acquisition in process to expand in the core area, and also another light oil acquisition to diversify our product mix. We're also planning to pilot an EOR pilot to provide energy to the reservoir and to assess enhanced oil recovery methods. We continue to perform a liability management plan. It's a 3-year plan, and we have already retired about 60 wells thus far, and every year we're planning to retire 40 wells. At the end of the day, 40 to 50 wells. At the end of the day, we would have retired greater than 200 wells in these properties, reducing operating expenses and asset retirement liability. That is phase 2, and a lot of that is in process. I'll get into more detail about the horizontal well transformation and the medium oil development in the next few slides. Phase 3 is planned. Major part of the next year is to continue with this horizontal modular development to appreciate production and optimize our recovery of the significant reserves remaining in the ground. We will implement the EOR methods based on our pilot this year to a much greater scale to optimize recovery greater than 10+%. We'll continue to execute our LMR plan to reduce operating expenses and asset obligations, and we'll continue to acquire lighter oil and gas to have a more solid, diversified product mix of perhaps 50% light oil, 40% heavy oil, and 10% gas. We've been focusing on ESG initiatives, eliminate carbon emissions, and eliminate footprint, and we've been executing that continuously on an ongoing basis based on the available capital, excuse me. I'll go on to the next slide. So this is one of the pool that I have provided some sample of what the transformation that is being occurred or being implemented. If you notice on the left slide, there was multi-well pads that was developed from directional wells, mainly the oil, the heavy oil. It's about 15 API. We have noticed when we studied these, the performance of these wells, directional wells for various technical reasons have performed far poorer or far less than vertical well, and horizontal wells, of course, in encountering a much greater pay has performed far better. And also, if you notice, all the injection is in the peripheral of the pool, and it is not it's not under water flood on a very designed flood pattern. So the recovery is less than 10%. But what's favorable in these in this sandstone formation is it is very porous and it is very permeable. So it transmits fluid readily. I mean, we're talking permeabilities in 3 to 5 darcies. And the porosity is greater than 30, average is greater than 30%. So we have piloted in the right slide here, we have piloted a well, and we used, we thought we'll use existing well and mill out and extend the lateral. But we noticed we encountered some technical difficulties with that and limitations with the producing equipment as well. So, so we have transformed into conventional horizontal. And if you notice the slides, up here, there's no bottom water. So we're focusing on that as the first drill. The pay is, anyway, it could be greater than 10 meters and 12 meters. On average, it's about 6 meters. But at the south side, there's bottom water. So we're focusing on the north side that doesn't have bottom water. And we have planned producers and injectors and producers and injectors. And if you notice, there's a lot of vertical locations along the way. And then the green circle around those wells, those directional wells, is actually the drainage area that, you know, that can be drained. And the communication area could be a little more than that. But if you notice, there's a lot of undrained reserves in here. And also it's been over flooded. So the reservoir has not managed efficiently. And the recovery is lower because we're not accessing the undrained reserves. And this transformation, just horizontal technology, could add another 10% plus, more than 10% recovery. When you're talking 400 million barrels oil in place or 350 in the heavy oil place, 10% is 35 million barrels. You can do the math. That's a lot of production and a lot of barrels to be had. And we further support it with the horizontal injectors and add certain substance to it to increase the viscosity and maximize the sweep efficiency. We're talking another 10 plus, greater than 10% recovery. You're looking at 70 to 100 million barrels of recovery in play here over the next 25, 40 years, much longer than I'll be around. So currently we have proposed 7 horizontals or 10 horizontals. I was just looking at this one here, but it's in different pools and different areas. So there's 10 horizontals proposed. The drilling cost has come down from previous year when we drilled the re-entry horizontal from somewhere around 900 to 800K. And further, these are drilled, from the existing lease pads, 10 meters away from pipeline that is pipeline to the facility. So bringing these wells back on, bringing these wells online is a lot quicker because it's already pipelined in. It's only 10-meter pipeline connecting to the pipeline. And then the tie-in cost is much lower as well. So we're focusing on this 10 well, and this is to commence after the long weekend here. The rigs are scheduled. They're in a local area in the window that is open, and it takes, it could take a day or two depending where they finish and when they finish, but it's all scheduled and coordinated for this development. The next major development to diversify our product mix is the medium oil development, which we tested 2 wells in these 2 different pools, and one of them tested at 100 barrels a day flowing and 300 barrels a day flowing. They usually flow for a month or so, then we have to put a pump in, artificial lift, and these have no bottom water, no pressure supports, so there's primary depletion initially, but being reservoir management background, we will get into pressure support immediately after 6 months of production. And as you can see by these orange lines, these are multi-pad well development. They're lateral or they're directional, slanted wells or deviated wells of only about 1,000 meters or less. And it's going to have a centralized battery, and so that it eliminates mini lease costs and property tax. And also we could re-inject the produced water, which is, there's no bottom water, so we actually have to make up water later on into optimized recovery. And but for these, we have to acquire new lease to accommodate the central battery, and that is in process. But overall, it'll be a very low cost operation, and we're getting much higher price because of the lightness of the oil. And this will become a very significant part of Prospera's growth and development. I think at this point, how are we doing this? How are we going to fund this? I'll turn this over to Chris, our VP of Finance.
Thanks, Sam. So the slide you're looking at here in front of you is the funding program for the upcoming drilling program. Basically, Prospera is taking a no incremental dilution approach. You can see there's no private placement included in the schedule. The first 2 items that we're looking at, really cash flow that's being generated from the current operation. So over the next 3 months, August through October, $2.4 million associated with the operating netback. And then as production rises and increases from the incremental wells, we're expecting much larger numbers towards the end of the year, with November and December coming in at 5 million. These are based on a conservative outlook of both production and pricing. Current cash on hand is roughly 1.3 million. This is based on closing cash flow from Q2 plus July revenue plus additional warrants that we've seen exercised over the past month. The schedule includes partner receivables and program participation from supporting partners. And we also have additional warrants to be exercised included in the schedule for the remainder of 2023. This is based on numbers that have already been included in fully diluted cap table that's already been published to the market. So a total of just over $15 million. So
Chris, I'd like to make a clarification. You know, this drilling program, they're not all 18 wells is happening right on the first day. You know, these are scheduled and they're different locations, and it spans over the next month and a half or 2 months. These drilling program. As I said, the rig has to move in the window that they're available, and then it's all scheduled and they're in different locations, and it spans over the next 2 months. And also after the drilling, the completion cost occurs after that, and then you know, subsequently after the completion, the equipment and tie-in cost comes in. So they're kind of staged development that spans over the next 2.5 months.
No, thanks, and that's an important distinction. And you know, along with the internal team, I think it's important to point out that the company is working and has coordinated strong working relationships with essential vendors to provide the reliable services that allow us to execute the upcoming program to both sustain and grow the production levels.
Thanks, Chris. So here, just to show over the primary depletion, you know, this is over the years since 2001. You can see they were around 7,000 barrels a day just on vertical wells. But over the years, there has been primary depletion has not been supported. This is the pink is where restructured Prospera commenced, and we did attain closer to this is, you know, closer to the 800 BOEs, 1,000 on average, and then we hit that harsh winter conditions. But we're back up here now, and the development shows, you know, we can still attain what we have mentioned, around 2,000 BOEs a day, but we're conservatively accounting for that harsh winter conditions that's coming up. And we have always announced around 1,800 BOEs a day, and that's still the target. And that's where we expecting to exit 2023. Here, I'll let Chris talk to our quarter financials.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So a bit of discussion on Q1 and Q2 financial statements, and a bit of reconciliation on the production and reported sales numbers as well. So I'll walk through each quarter. You know, what Prospera is seeing in production, both gross and net, as many of you are aware. Prospera publishes its working interest by property in its MD&A. And so as a result, you know, we roll it up to a corporate level, but we can see that Q1 reported gross production levels were 511 barrels in Q1, and BOEs rather per day, and 725 BOE per day reported in Q2. And this contrasts against the net numbers of 411 and 565. Those are different than the reported sales numbers that we see in the financial statements for a couple of reasons. I mean, gross versus net is the first item, but secondly, not all of the or some of the gas that's produced in the fields is also consumed by the wells, and so therefore is not sold. So this is how we reconcile from you know, net production, gross production to net production, and then to reported sales on a BOE basis. So in Q1, Prospera reported BOE net sales of 295 BOE per day and 478 BOE per day in Q1 and Q2 respectively.
Those are sales numbers.
Correct, yes. The revenue associated with those sales reported in the financial statements net basis on a total dollars basis is 1.6 million and $3 million in Q1 and Q2 respectively. Production increase contributing partially to the increase from Q2 over Q1, Also, pricing can help contribute to that. We've seen pricing of roughly about $70 per barrel in Q2 versus about 59 reported in Q1. The royalties are reported roughly about 12 or 13% when they're rolled up like this. There's a few more decimal points that would make sense here, but we're reporting about 12% of sales for royalties. Operating costs did decrease from 1.9 million down to 1.6, and Prospera is reporting $33 per barrel of operating costs in Q2, targeting roughly $25 per barrel, as it completes its 3-year transition of reducing fixed costs and overall efficiency in the fields. There's operating netback of negative 500,000 reported in Q1 2023, positive operating netback of 1.1 million reported in Q2. We're also reporting some of the warrants that were exercised and debt funding that was completed in Q1 and Q2. So this helped contribute some of the operating losses that were experienced at the beginning of the year from the cold weather setbacks.
You can see in Q2 we have rebounded back, and we're still appreciating our production as we are repairing some of these infrastructure. Also, this understates our revenue assumed and barrels assumed by one of our default partners that are in default as well.
That's great.
I think that kind of summarizes our upcoming development program and path forward as we execute phase 2 of our development to add in substantial production and lead restructured Prospera into profitability. Kerry, Bill?
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for everybody who submitted your questions. If you could just make them clear and concise, that's appreciated. And I'll go through these. If I don't read your exact question, it's because another attender has said something similar, so I'll try to give them as concise as I can to Sam here. Sam, what does the program participation include? Does the program participation include an overriding royalty?
When you say participation, are they referring to partner participation?
I believe so. It's not clarified.
So it's one of the better things with this company. There's very little override. I think it's less than 1%. There's very little override. There's something else I want to point out. These horizontal wells, they qualify for 6,000 cubes royalty holiday. So there's quite a bit of incentive. You're not paying royalty in the, or very little royalty on the first 6,000 cubes. That's almost like, what is that? 6,000 times, that's about 40,000 barrels. The first 40,000 barrels is royalty holiday. Participation. So in one of the areas, we're 84%, and in another area, the majority of the well is planned in 7 well, we're 69% working interest, and then another 10%. Is that include 69% doesn't include the default partner? So we're essentially around 79%. We're average 80% participation.
Okay. Regarding the cost of the wells, Sam, I believe you said last year the horizontals cost 900,000, but it's been reduced to 800,000. How much do the vertical wells cost?
The vertical well is around 500 because they're still directional. Even though they're vertical, but they're deviated wells. But it's around 400 to 500K. And there's completion and tie-in in addition to that.
Okay. How is Prospera marketing the oil?
We work with a very good team that that does a very good job of finding the best margin person that we can terminal that we can deliver to that's in the surrounding area. So the oil is processed at our central facilities, and it's been trucked to the nearby terminals.
Okay, can you discuss what size of acquisition you are targeting and how will it be funded?
Okay, without giving away too much, in the expanding area or in our core area, we're looking at oil in place more. It's very similar to what Prospera was, these areas. There's a lot of wells and needs to be optimized. So we've been revising our request to concentrate on the pool itself and not get all the peripheral liabilities. And literally, it could double our oil in place if when we complete this acquisition. But it's mostly liability deposit transfer type of acquisition in the core area. The light oil area is also it's a fairly good deal on a flowing barrel. I mean, I think light oil flowing dollar per barrel could be anywhere 30,000 plus. But we're getting a fairly good deal, much less than that. I don't want to give out numbers.
Okay. This deals with the winter. The winter was hard. The essence of it is the winter was hard last year, obviously, and production fell. What are you doing to mitigate that this winter so that we don't see something similar occur?
Winterization is we have implemented a program. It's more than insulation. There's a lot of monitoring systems, ESD valves and PSV valves, and all of the control system that if there's a spike, a pressure built up, that it'll shut down quickly and we can fix those things. So we are recalibrating and replacing and looking at all those proactive maintenance monitoring, is focusing on monitoring systems so that it alarms us if there's any issue well ahead, so we can mitigate the downtime.
Sam, back to the last question. Someone said, could you please clarify how you're funding the acquisition? And if you might have said by taking on the liabilities of the acquisition. Is that what we should understand?
Funding the acquisition, yes. So the acquisition is scheduled subsequent to our development program here and the barrels to be had. And we're anticipating there will be an appreciation on the stock price, reflecting our production appreciation and NPV value. So we're thinking we'd be in a little much better position. And also the incremental production leads us into profitability, more than free cash flow as well. And I think those success and performance, those performance factors could provide perhaps a funding program that we'll seek out to the market.
What is meant by partner receivables?
I want to take on that. We can answer.
Sure. Yeah. Partner receivables are categorized as the working interest, joint interest billings that are receivable by Prospera. So these are the partner portions of operating expenses, abandonments, development programs historically that Prospera holds as receivable from its partners.
It's basically joint interest billings. They receive it and they process it, and then they get back to us.
Okay. A question is this presentation going to be available afterwards? And the answer to that is yes. If you signed up, you'll be emailed a link to view it again. And tomorrow I will also post it on my YouTube channel. So there's two ways in which you can view it after the fact. Next question. what is the expected pricing on the operating netback for the drilling program?
Expected pricing. Well, price is something we can, it's hard, it's not under our control, but we are anticipating much better price. I think the price has been, especially Western Canadian Select, has been increasing favorably. The netback is a good question because the fixed expense is fixed expense. When we start adding more and more production, that fixed expense is divided by the number of barrels. So it actually lowers the operating cost. So this incremental addition of production, the op cost associated with that is much lower than what we're reflecting here in the 30s. It could be in the 20s. So the margin is way better on the upcoming drilling program. Also, keep in mind, it has a royalty holiday as well. So the margin on these new horizontals are very, very favorable.
Sam, the attender wanted to just offer one clarification to the question. He writes, what prices were used to model the 5 million operating netback during November and December?
We always, Chris, we always used $65, didn't we? 65 or $68. That's the number.
That's correct. Yeah, we've got a range between 65 and 68, and I would suggest that prices exceed those values currently.
Okay. Next question, with increase of barrels produced after drilling program, how much can we expect the price per barrel to be reduced afterwards?
Price per barrel or operating?
So because we're going to be producing more, how much will that reduce our operating cost per barrel?
As I mentioned, just previously I mentioned, if you're looking for an exact number or a range, we haven't modeled it yet, or we're still working on it through accounting. But I think I would suspect probably another $5 to $10 at least.
Okay. I still have a lot of questions here, so if you ask the question, I haven't gotten to it yet, I will. Here's a question. Can you explain how royalty tax works for Prospera? Prospera has referenced the royalty tax dropping from around 12% of revenue to 4 to 5% of revenue in future years. Can you talk about the path to lower royalty taxes and what drives that?
When you say future revenues, we were referring to the horizontals that we're drilling, and it's going to be modular development over time. And each one of those wells qualify a royalty holiday of 6,000 cubes, the first 6,000 cubes. And as we're, if some previously drilled horizontal comes out of that royalty holidays, we keep drilling in another modular development that qualifies for a royalty holiday as well. So when you average things out, we are expecting a lower royalty rate going forward.
Yeah, Bill, the effective royalty rate on the royalty holiday, these horizontal wells, is 2.5%, and a large portion of the upcoming production is going to be associated with the development program. So you can see that 2.5% is going to pull things down considerably from where they're at currently.
Further, we'll be getting into improved enhanced recovery that also has a royalty holiday associated with it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. With OPEX, operating expenditure, on a per barrel basis around $50 to $60 per barrel, Prospera has talked about OPEX per barrel potentially dropping to the low $20 per barrel range over time. Regarding the path to get to $20 per barrel operating expense, can you discuss the different bucks that drive the drop over time? I understand one factor is Prospera already has the physical logistics and pipeline storage, etc.
Correct. I have alluded to our liability management program that we have set a 3-year program corresponding to our 3 phases of development. And if you notice, there's along the lateral path that we'll be eliminating all these vertical locations. And I also mentioned we have already abandoned 60 wells, and we're also in the process of reclaiming as well. And we also are eliminating all these peripheral surface leases and mineral leases that is not contributing to our development. This optimization and improving efficiency is in play right now, and every year we're abandoning 60 wells. Those reduce property tax, significant amount of property taxes immediately. And as we retire these leases and abandonment, there's many associated costs that releases that reduces the fixed operating expenses. But as we, at the same time, we're increasing our barrels, and that reduces the operating cost per barrel quite drastically.
Okay. Hi, Samuel. Thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. Have a few questions. When you say 300 barrels per day behind pipe, are those wells haven't been turned online or optimizations?
Those are, yes, they were, and some of them we keep optimizing as we expand the perfs and things like that. But majority of that is just engine rod failure. They've been on production, and it's minor expenses. And as we're constantly improving the winterization program at the same time, shutting down and then replacing ESD valves and this and that, things are going up and down, and we're bringing it down. Hopefully over the next month, where our facility team and pipeline team and operations are working diligently to ensure that we attain a nice, stable, sustained, stable production, and we don't. There used to be a lot of vibration in our production, but it has calmed down more and more. We'd like to see that 1,500 BOEs of stable base production, without development, and we're trying hard to approach it. So, to answer your question, those 300 barrels are minor repairs and equipment replacement to bring it on.
Okay. A listener was wondering about the delay to the overall development plan this year, that my expectation was that it was going to occur sooner in the summer.
Yeah, a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people have asked that. There's a number of things that are affecting, not a delay. I mean, it's as we schedule. There's, just to give you an idea, a horizontal well takes about 100 services to be coordinated. But prior to that, we have to do a lot of preparation, getting permits and licensing and so on and so on. And we were anticipating to be end of July or August, but the rigs availability and so on, it's always a matter of weeks in this game. And of course, there's weather condition that can do that, can affect that as well. So I feel we're in that range, in the span of time that we expected to commence the drilling.
Okay. For the 500 barrel per day break-even price for Prospera's costs, what price are you assuming the WTI WCS differential would be for that calculation?
Yeah, roughly about $15 US, $15, $16 US, which works out to $20 Canadian.
And then what WTI price are we assuming there, Chris?
We're looking at a WTI price of around $70, $72. Okay.
I always speak Canadian. I just think $68 Canadian.
Okay.
For us.
Yeah.
Also wondering what the learnings were from the plug and abandoned that happened during last year.
Very good question. You see, we were, we thought let's use the existing well, and there's re-entry technology that I implemented, or executed in subfield days, and we ramped up the production a fair bit back in the early 90s or mid 90s. But what we discovered was it's actually a favorable encounter in the build section. I mean, technically we were able to do it, but and we're also entering a depleted pay zone. But in this case, it's about 6,000 kPa. The mud weight is, could be 9 or 10 MPa. So there's overbalanced drilling in the lateral pay. In the build part of it, we didn't expect sustained prolific gas. We thought that zone was depleted. To our surprise, the zone was not depleted, and it was sustained prolific gas. It adds to reserves, and we can add it, as Chris mentioned, we use gas to run our operations, fuel gas. So when we entered the lateral, because we're not setting intermediate casing and we're drilling monobore, we left ourselves, or you're left open to the build section encounters. And when we depleted, or when we lost circulation in the pay zone, the prolific gas started coming at us, and we couldn't sustain it. So that was one of the biggest learning, that even though we think there's no gas zone, perhaps there's in between, there's pockets of gas. So we have taken a more conservative, safe route to have a conventional or horizontal, but only 10 meters away from the existing lease, and the tie-in is a lot quicker, and ensure that we cement and set intermediate casing, and our focus is going to be on the pay zone rather than in between zones.
Okay. Will accounts payables be going down?
Yes, that's I mean, Prospera is a reorganization effort, and that's been underway for the past 2 years, with a lot of focus on reducing the accounts payable liabilities. I mean, one example is that the accounts payable actually on a year-to-date basis have already been reduced by $4 million, and we expect to continue to reduce that here, especially the legacy arrears over time. We're also working with a lot of our current vendors to ensure that they're paid promptly as well on a timely basis.
Okay. Who is the rig provider for the vertical drills planned after the long weekend?
Well, we have a few that is available, and I think if the person could give me a call or something, we can talk in detail without announcing or giving information that is not correct.
Okay. How long do the royalty holidays last?
6,000 cubes, first 6,000 cubes.
Okay. The 1,800 barrels per day projection for the end of this year, is that gross or sales? Reads the question.
Our forecast is always gross, because but we're almost with the default partner, we're about 90% in a lot of these properties.
Okay. And this investor in the company says, sorry, I don't come from the oil field if my question is simple, but could you explain why you close some wells to reduce liability and footprint, but then drill new wells that won't add that right back in?
Okay. So heavy oil, with the heavy oil, spacing of drilling spacing of the wells, or 1 per LSD, and the drainage area of the heavy oil, depending on the viscosity and thickness, and the reservoir quality condition, the drainage area is within the LSD. But really, you've probably drained 100% or closer to 100% of the oil, only near wellbore. You're not reaching out that far out. Right in between, and just a little bit away from the wells, there's undrained reserves that hasn't been tapped into. And you don't need so many drilling locations, which adds to the operating cost and maintenance, and more pumps, and all these surface equipment and downhole equipment is not required. With a horizontal well, you're accessing 400, 500 meters of pay, whereas a vertical well, you're only accessing 3 or 4 meters of pay, and then you have to drill another vertical, new equipment, new lease, new all of that. So you're optimizing your operation, optimizing your recovery, and reducing your operating costs. And this is not a new technology. I mean, horizontal wells have contributed to better optimize and efficient operation of production and recovery.
Okay, the investor says, Sam, thank you for your detailed answer. Next question, thank you for this presentation. Last question, is there risk of timing paying for the 18 well program, as it takes time to get new wells on production and to collect revenue 30 days after production, ?
Okay, as I mentioned with the horizontal wells, they're on an existing lease. To bring them online is much quicker. We're thinking after completions, it could be just a matter of weeks. But we're not counting on that production. We might count on a month later on that well's production. And Chris and our accounting team, we have bolstered the accounting team, so we have prompt numbers, and we attend to payables. We're getting better at it. Trying to return the calls within 48 hours, and any type of dispute or any type of concerns, Chris gets on the line and deals with them immediately. We are aspire to. I also want to point out one thing. When we started this restructuring company, this company was in terminal position, and when I came over, there was $14 million arrears to the local community and vendors, and I insisted that we should do. We cannot just put people in receivership, not pay the local community and people, and we have done just that. So it's been challenging because I could have done without all the arrears and start out fresh from the gate. But Prospera is dedicated to the community within our capability, and we're trying to move into profitability. And I can assure you, there's some vendors and some people are supportive of our efforts, that we didn't just walk away from the previous arrears, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, Sam, 2 more questions. Would there be consideration to replace additional barrels expected through the well program with additional barrels expected through acquisition, or would acquired barrels only be incremental to the well program?
Acquired barrels are incremental to the well program.
Okay, and last question, are you planning to put out an NPV study after this 18 well program? Updated?
Certainly. As I mentioned, our NPV has increased from 6 million to 58 million to 72 million. Each one of these horizontal is going to prove up adjacent locations. So that is going to be reflected in the NPV value.
Okay. Kerry Lutz, if you could come back on and bring us to a close.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Sam and Chris. Really informative, answered a lot of my questions as well. And we really covered a lot of ground today. Most importantly, I think it's clear to everybody on this call, the drill program is moving ahead, it's imminent, and its success is quite likely. Sorry we couldn't hear from George today, because George really summed it up well the last time that I spoke with you guys. And high likelihood of success and a high likelihood of the barrels BOE that we're looking for. So we'll conclude now. Make sure you go over to the site. If you haven't signed up for notifications, do it now. ProsperaEnergy.com.
Gary, can I interrupt one
sure.
second, if you don't mind? Just a comment to George. We've given George time off preparing for the drilling season and the drilling program, because next 2-3 months, he's going to be attentive 24/7 to all these operations. So I think he needed a much needed break, and he's going to be totally on this drilling program 24/7.
Great. That's great to hear. And Sam, also thank you for taking time out. I know that given your druthers, you would prefer to be out there in the field doing this stuff rather than talking about it, but communication really is important. And I think a lot of you out there got your questions answered, and I think Prospera is on the right path. Thank you all again. And hopefully next time when we have one of these webcasts, we'll be talking about a wholly different set of issues, which acquisition to do now and which drilling program to implement. So again, thank you guys, Chris, Sam, Bill, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Bill and Kerry. And anyone who has questions, feel free.